Beauty queen, the woman of all of our dreams. How are you?
Oh, that's so sweet. I'm doing well. How are you?
Doing quite well, doing quite well. I'm so happy to be able to do this. I'm so happy that you're able to join us. And on that, let me welcome everyone who is potentially watching. World, welcome to the Preston 79. We've been live stream. I'm I feel honored as well as energized to have one of my favorite people for so many years, such an inspiring and inspired, encouraging, hardworking beacon of the arts, the one and only Maori Carmel Jones. Yeah, not with Jones. Oh my God. Oh, Jones just sounds, I guess, so black exploitation.
Yeah, well, it works. Why not?
Oh, how are you, beautiful? You well?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty well. Thanks for asking. How are you?
I'm well. I'm well. It's been a while since we've spoken. I'm not even going to try to figure out when was the last time. But this is what I will say. Something that I'm always confident about is that you're out there doing great work, even if people aren't telling you, which they often are.
Hmm.
Just know you're out there doing wonderful things, and occasionally they'll come across my desk, and I'll just be like, "See, this is Mary. This is what she does. This is what she's always
Thank
done." So,
you.
of course, just telling the truth. So we've known each other for a few years, and
Several few.
yeah, just a few. And we'll get into some of that journey and those adventures. But something I always want to do with someone, especially an inspired, creative artist like yourself, is to get into your personal history to understand how the dots of awareness have connected in your consciousness to make you the artist that you've become because you are a filmmaker, writer, director, so many things. What else am I missing? What else do you do?
Well, I'm a curator and
Yeah.
producer, and I write sometimes. But and costume design, I guess that's the one most people don't know about, is I keep that close to the vest. But yeah, that's it.
Yeah, you are definitely a curator, and your eye and sense of context as it relates to design and color is no joke.
Thank you.
I wore my colorful active sheep heron in honor of you today.
Thank you.
But this isn't. I've known you since you were. You had to have been about 16.
Yeah.
So yeah, you were. But I do something I always noticed about you is that you always had leadership qualities, and you always seemed inspired, even when you were a young, respectfully listening student,
Mm,
which is a great quality. Um, but that when I met you, you were living in Atlanta. But
hmm.
as far as I can remember, your journey it actually starts in California, doesn't it?
Yeah, I was born in Los Angeles.
Okay, okay. Can
Yeah.
you tell us a little bit about that and some of your experiences that might have been effective in resonating with you?
Um, Gosh. Well, I was born technically in Beverly Hills in a birthing center. I was the first Black child born in that birthing center, which my mother loves to tell that story. And so all of the doctors and nurses and midwives they wanted to watch this because they hadn't had any Black babies born there before.
Right.
Um, and yeah, we lived in LA, first in Inglewood and then in West Hollywood. and I went to Baldwin Hills Elementary School. I went to a Catholic school for kindergarten right before that. And then I moved after fifth grade to Atlanta. My mother, who's originally from the south suburbs of Chicago,
mm,
she's from Harvey. Um, she went to college in LA, met my father. My father is third generation Angelino. And she decided, my mom was always interested in LA. Her grandmother had moved there. And so, yeah, she was very, my mother feels like someone who's from LA, and I'm actually shocked that she left. And I was always curious about that growing up. Like, why are we in Atlanta? I did not get it at all. And, but now I kind of get it. I think her parents retired and they moved to Atlanta, with a lot of Black people. You know, there was that remigration that happened in the late 80s and the early 90s. And my grandparents originally from the South. Harvey had become a very challenging place to live as they were retiring. And I think they wanted to have, you know, an easier life in their retirement. And so my one uncle, my mom comes from a family of six, there was one boy. My uncle Bo had gone to Morehouse, and so he had made a life for himself in Atlanta. And my grandparents decided to make one there. And my mother, who had spent all of her 20s being far from her family, I think thought she should be closer to them. We should be closer to them. I have a younger brother with my mom. And yeah,
how's it?
so we moved to Atlanta, which was very shocking.
Right.
Because our it was culturally shocking. Our life in LA was very different than it would become initially in Atlanta. I think we settled back into who we are. But I mean, you've met my mom. My mom is cool,
Yes.
and she is an artist, and you know, she had us, we were, most of her friends did not have kids. So we were always, my brother and I were like the kids at all these things because my mother was very clear. I don't know if she was clear, but she was at least trying to still have quite a life. And yeah, my brother and I were along for the ride. So, you know, when we got to Atlanta, I think definitely within my family, our comfort around adults was not welcomed, or it was shocking. I think that we were like so comfortable, you know, saying what's up to adults,
Mm,
and definitely just culturally shocking. Like we moved to Lithonia, and so we were in, you know, these suburbs with a lot of people in traditional two-parent families, you know, 2.5 kids, you know, and all of that. And then here we were, this like hodgepodge with two different fathers, and you know what I mean? Just like very, very, we were weirdos. And I remember it was sixth grade. And I remember this girl said to me, "You speak two languages. You speak black and white." Because, you know, the LA accent is so different than the Atlanta one. So, um, and I think it's just being 11, you know, is hard generally. And it's really hard to move and be 11. And so I know I went from being like a really confident kid to having to question myself a lot, which in some ways I never grew out of, right? Like I think I spent the rest of my life presenting confident because I started out confident, but also being deeply like unsure of myself. In large part, I think because of that move. But Atlanta was interesting. um, my mom in Atlanta began experimenting with playwriting and dramaturgy, and we were very much a theater family. I joined the Youth Ensemble of Atlanta with Freddie Hendrix, and um, was very much a part of, you know, a youth theater scene, and was a dancer, and ended up going to Chambly High. But I had gotten into Avondale before I went to Chambly, and so I had made some friends with people that you know, like Dorian Missick and Hakeem
sure.
Young, and um, really was immersed in, the arts either through YAA or through Hakeem and Dorian and their friends from Avondale. And then I was a hip hop kid. And so I think I met, how I got to you, I think I met Messiah at the Rowdy store
That's exactly
because
where.
I was one of those kids, there were a bunch of us who, with our book bags, would go to the underground, go to Lenox Mall, and, just kind of ride MARTA all day on Saturdays and Sundays. And um, I don't remember all the details anymore, but I definitely remember like being at the Rowdy store and then running errands with Messiah, like to Little Five Points and to Solvit, just sort of running all over and, joining Zulu and, obviously like meeting everybody in that circle. And then for me, I was then ready to be out of high school because I was like, there's a whole nother world out there. I'm done with this nonsense. Um, and so I ended up leaving high school a year early and went to college. And yeah, I mean, sometimes I don't believe the number of things that I did at one time. Um, but it happened. So
Right.
yeah,
I mean, things we could, not too many to mention, but you've done a lot.
yeah.
Um, it's interesting because around the time, okay, firstly, I didn't know that your mother was an artist. I just remember that your mother was cool. Your mother would attend Zulu meetings and just come in, and we would be like, "Hey, is there anything?" Because we wanted to know if she had any questions, and she would just be like, "No, I'm just observing y'all," which is the responsible parental thing. Because when you think about it, you know, you should know what your children are doing and who they're around. And sometimes, because we were young adults, we would take that for granted, like, oh, these are younger people. Sure, they want to be around us. Yeah, come to the meeting, hang out with us. Blah blah. I mean, parents should know. And your mother was one of the first people to come into the fold and check things out, which I really respected. And she was someone that we grew to expect at meetings and to share her opinion, which she was reserved about because she would listen a lot. But when she felt compelled to share, she would.
Yes.
Right. But I didn't know that she was an artist. I didn't
Hmm.
know back then. So that's
Yeah.
interesting. So I'm sure that was uh, very influential in terms of what inspired you and what shaped your perception in a lot of different ways.
Yeah, for sure.
Right. And um, one thing that I have to credit and thank you for is that you were one of the people who helped to bring a lot more young people to the organization, which is something that we wanted.
Mm,
Because you remember in the 90s, that was, I think, around the time that there was the first real paradigm shift we noticed, especially in rap music, because the hip hop as a culture in the 70s and 80s had more. There was rap music, of course, and it was popular, but it had more to do with dance and art in addition to rap music. But um, music had taken over by the late 80s into the 90s. And in the 90s, we were starting to notice that it was becoming a less of a community respectful art form and expression. People were coming into the culture, particularly with the music, saying anything that they wanted to say and chasing different carrots that were being placed out there by the industry. And it worried us. So we wanted to make sure that young people understood the culture and had and understood and also felt that hip hop was the was could be a sanctuary that it had intended to be a
hmm.
sanctuary for expression apart from the uh, vices and questionable ills that surround the community. So we really wanted to make sure that young people knew about it. We didn't want to just talk to each other like, yeah, I'm hip, you know, hip hop. Yeah, we wanted to make sure young people were involved and were becoming aware because, it's something, culture is something to be passed on. And you were very helpful with that because you brought all your friends. You brought Mikhail, like you said, you brought Dorian and Hakeem, and we're all still tight to this day, which is a beautiful thing. And sometimes I take it for granted because I'm just kind of a, not to be too self-effacing, but I feel sometimes like an itinerant on walkabout as it relates to my personal journey. Like, oh yeah, yeah, sure, I know, yeah, I'm going to encourage you. That's what you do. But people will come back to me and tell me like, hey, what you did was very encouraging and it was helpful, and which is great to me. That's, there's no financial or material that can equate to the feeling that you've enriched someone's life. So that's positive. And you continued that tradition. So let's you finished your this journey overview at starting college, which is where we diverged because I stayed here, and you went to, was it American University, I believe,
I started at Howard.
at Howard. Okay,
Yeah. So, um,
okay.
and this is where, I mean, that's the thing. Sometimes I'm like, the story sometimes doesn't seem real, but I went to Howard for freshman year and I got an internship at Sony because of, being around you all. I had gotten an internship at Rowdy Records.
Mhm.
And then I got an internship at Sony the summer after freshman year back in Atlanta. And then Sony hired me to be a college marketing rep, but they only had a spot open in Atlanta. So I
Mhm.
transferred to Clark Atlanta for one semester for the fall to take this job. And I don't know why, because it wasn't like I wanted to work in the music industry, but I think I just thought it was really interesting. And I found that I was really good at like marketing and doing events. And so I took the job and I had enjoyed the internship. I took the job and then the spot in DC opened back up. So I went back to Howard the second semester of my sophomore year as if I had never left. And then, I think something that's also been running in my life for a long time is, I'm very, I am an artist. I'm in the arts. I'm always around artists. I'm very interested in beauty. I'm very interested in, film and all these things. But I've also been really interested in history and politics and advocating for social justice. And that started right before the Zulu days. I was in MXGM and like doing my own versions of activism
Right.
on my high school campus. And so that didn't change when I got to college, right? And so at Howard, when I got back that second semester of sophomore year, I ended up participating in a protest along with folks like Ta-Nehisi Coates and Camilla Forbes. And I lost my scholarship. I had an under the table scholarship at Howard. And I ended up, this is also, I feel like, classic Maori story. I did the PR for our protest. So I ended up getting quoted in the Washington Post.
Ooh,
And the president of the school, I get a call from the president and had to meet with him. And he was basically like, you know, we can't have you out here, you know, speaking ill of us.
Deaconess, yes.
Yeah. So I lost my scholarship. And in
Mm.
my, at this point, 19-year-old brain, I was like, well, I'm not going to pay to go to this school. Da, 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 da. So I
Rebel.
transferred to American.
Right.
And I hadn't even heard of American before I went to college. But the one beautiful thing in DC is there's a consortia of all the undergraduate schools, and you can use the libraries of all the schools. And I had started going to American's library because it's such a beautiful campus. And so I ended up transferring there because they had a really amazing history program. And yeah. So a lot was really interesting about that move. I'm so glad I made it academically, but I had all my friends from Howard, so I had the best of both worlds. I had a social life at Howard. People still think I graduated from there, like they didn't know that I left because I was working for Sony. I was always on campus. But then I was getting this really rich academic experience that I wanted at American because Bernice Johnson Regan, the founder of Sweet Honey and the Rock,
Mm.
was in the history department at American. And with her, She became my advisor. She helped me get an internship at the Smithsonian. We together devised an American music curriculum. So I ended up doing a thesis on hip hop and studying American music.
Wow.
And it was, yeah, that experience was also really, really beautiful. And so it was so nice to have both of those worlds, to have like all the culture at Howard and then have this like really, really beautiful mentorship by, such an amazing person. I mean, may she rest in peace. Dr. Regan is like, you know, yeah.
See, this explains a lot because, and saw that down the line how much incredible work you were doing. I said, of course, Mary's she's had this in her. She's had this potential. But in terms of what you were becoming exposed to and immersing yourself into in terms of knowledge and awareness, I mean, these are things that I didn't know. I'm so happy that we're talking about. And this is,
Mhm.
you know, you're a clear choice for our icon of the week. But
No.
I, okay, sometimes I'll lose my thought. I knew that this opportunity to actually engage and to talk, we would be able to learn a lot about what makes you the artist and creative and constructive individual that you are. So
Mm.
continue.
um, well, yeah, I mean, I guess that was the undergrad experience, kind of split between the music industry, but also experimenting with a lot, like studying with Hailey and getting into the film bag in that way. And I don't know, I feel like we don't have enough time for all of the randomness, but I ended up working at the Washington City paper. Ta actually had like helped me get this job there I was interested in journalism and writing,
Mm.
and I was on the arts desk at the Washington City paper, but really kind of frustrated with my experience there. And so I decided to go to film school because I was trying to figure out a medium. Sadly, I spent a decade trying to like force what I was doing into one thing, which I
Mm.
realize now was not the best use of my time. Like there's some people who are specialists and some people are generalists, and I think I'm more of a generalist. Um, but because I was trying to do that, I felt like I needed one path. I ended up coming to film as a possible vehicle because film requires history, it requires costumes, it requires, photography. Like it required all these things that I had been interested in and are participating in. And so I thought it would be a place to hold all of my interests, which is still true. But I wish I hadn't thought of it in that way. I've met a lot of artists who are like 10 years younger, and I feel like they have a different approach. They're like, I do it all, and I wish I had
Right.
had that confidence much earlier. But that's how I got to Philly was I applied to different film programs. Temple offered me a full ride. Temple at the time was known for their documentary program, and similarly to being blessed with Dr. Regan, Michelle Parkerson, who's a legendary filmmaker, she was teaching in the department and she became my advisor. And so that was like another beautiful mentorship. And I came to Philly in 2001. And I actually did not enjoy my graduate program, not because of her, but because of other white men in the department.
Okay.
um,
Any
and
pushback?
oh my gosh, pushback rocked my confidence. I mean, I was 23. I was such a baby, and but because of that pushback, I ended up finding myself doing a lot of programming. I had all these contacts from music industry, from Zulu, from all these places, and those contacts followed me. I came to Philly And I was introduced to Rich Medina before I got there. So, I became friends with him and Lady Alma. And then I met the Jazzy Fat Nasties and Richard Nichols and, was again in the music scene. All of the films that I made in grad school were about music.
Right.
And so that was always a part of my life. And then, I think for lack of time, it's just sort of like fast forward to I didn't know that I was going to stay in Philly, but I ended up getting married. And my then husband needed to stay in Philly for his own school. And so I was like, all right, I'm going to be here. Let me make something of this place, of my being in this place. And so I started a film festival back in 2007.
Right.
That was, I had made a film about women in music, in hip hop specifically in Philly, and had covered the Black Lily music series as part of that film. And, like I said, I had become close to the Jazzies and close to Richard Nichols. And when I started my film festival, I was like racking my brain for a name one day. And I was like, if we call it Black Lily, then everybody's going to understand the vibe. They're going to understand what it is.
Hmm.
And so I brought it to them and I was like, would you let me extend this name? And they were like, yes. And they were like, and we think the issues that women face in film, they actually also face in music. So we did a film and music festival. And it was me and the Jazzies. We collaborated on it. And so we did that in 2007 and 2008. Really, really incredible experience. I learned a ton. And we didn't do another festival after the market crash. It just kind of became too hard to like, you know, bring ourselves to try it because we couldn't raise any money. Like we did two really amazing events basically for free, and it was unsustainable to keep going. But I got the programming bug and started doing film programming in different places after doing that festival. Um, and uh, I left Philly. I got divorced and moved to LA to go to CalArts to do a second graduate program.
Hmm.
And that program ended up not being the best fit. And because of my first experience, I think I was like 10 years older. I was like, I'm not about to like put myself through this again. I already have an MFA. I don't have to prove to anyone that I have to finish this program. So I dropped out after 1 year and ended up being offered a job back in Philly. So I came back. And
You're
so this
welcome.
is the pattern of Philly like not letting me go, right? Like it was a really good job offer. But I was also like, okay, now I'm back in Philly again and I'm like gonna be here. What am I gonna do with myself? And that was when I ended up starting Black Star, the film festival.
Awesome.
Um, so yeah, I think, yeah. I feel like I could talk to you forever because one, it's been a long time, but also,
Yeah, we're
it
catching up.
just but that's how we get to, 2012, basically. And so I've been doing the festival from 2012 to 2019, and then we launched Black Star Projects as the parent organization in 2020. And Black Star has been a project that I was doing, as a curatorial project, but I had all kinds of day jobs. I mean, I've been doing many different things, managing artists. I worked at a museum here, I've worked at a foundation. There's like a lot of cultural work by day and on the side. But yeah,
Hmm.
there's a lot of hustling, making films, making music videos, producing. Yeah.
Right. And doing great work. And this is the life we've chosen. So hey, right? Um, I wanted to ask you, when I look at Black Star Film Festival, the organization and the brand, I get so much of you and intentionality. What, if you could describe it, and I hope I'm not being vague, what came from, what came out when you made Black Star? Like, what was the inspiration? Like, boom, this is what I'm doing.
Well, I don't know. To be perfectly honest, the intention wasn't what it is now, right? Like when I
Okay.
started it, I thought it was a one-time happening. So I was doing a film and social justice film series, And then thought for the summer, I was like, I want to do a focus on the African diaspora. If you remember in 2012, there was like a lot of 50th anniversaries of African independence, celebrations, observations. And so I was like, I just wanted to do this one time festival. And I actually thought it would be multidisciplinary. But I started looking at films first, but I thought I was going to get to music and to dance and to these other things. But by the time I started looking at films of people of the African diaspora that had not screened in Philly, I had like a list of 30 very quickly
Mm,
and decided, like, let's just do a film festival. I've got this venue, I've got the days, we'll do a film festival. I didn't have a name for it. And my good friend, Dr. Yaba Blay, who's Ghanaian, and so it's all Black Star every day, all day. She was like, you should call it Black Star. And um, you know, it stuck. It made a lot of sense in so many different contexts, obviously the legacy of Garvey, but also the legacy of Nkrumah. And also, there was all this Afrofuturism at that time. And so I kind of like the um, cosmological aspect of it, right? Like thinking of literally a star, also
mm.
film being the art of light, so that was how we got to um, the initial naming. And um, yeah, here we are.
Right. And we got all of that from that. We really
Yeah,
did.
yeah.
Um, and you worked with some interesting, inspired, and colorful people along the way. Uh,
To say the
as
least.
you start laughing, and I know we probably certain faces come into our minds. Someone who I wanted to ask you about, who you worked with, who I became aware of through one of my college mates, Sean Peters,
Hmm.
is Terrence Nance. I
Hmm.
love his diverse approach to art as an artist. How
Hmm.
did you all become aware of each other, and how did you all start to work?
Yeah, I remember meeting Terrence. Hmm, Probably the first year of the festival, if not right before. Of course, he had had an oversimplification at Sundance, and at that time, it would be like one black film, so we'd all know whose film it was.
Hmm.
And so I knew his name. I knew about an oversimplification. And then he was friends with my friend Chantrell Lewis, I went to Howard with. And I think Chantrell must have introduced us. If not her, another mutual friend, Lee Sumter, did. And so I don't remember. And Lee went to Spelman, right? So it's like the world is so small. But one of the two of them had introduced us, and we ended up being on a panel together with Baron Claiborne and somebody else. But this was like back in 2013 or something. And then I think he came to the first festival, and I remember him saying, I'm gonna make a film and be here every year. And
So
he did do that from 2013 to 2019. He was at every festival. And then we just developed, that's my brother now. Like, I mean, he's one, definitely a dear, dear friend. And we've collaborated. I curated his first solo show at the ICA in 2023. And yeah, I mean, we'll always hopefully be collaborating with him in some way. We're part of an organization in Baltimore, which is where he lives now. And so been working on that since 2020 together. It's a larger collective, including Sean, and a bunch of other good folks. So
they are really developing that community there. So many people.
yeah,
Awesome. Um,
yeah.
I saw that you had done a project with Coleman Domingo that was really uh, interesting. Was, was that something you had directed, or that was something you curated?
So, at when we started Black Star Projects as the parent organization, the
Right.
film festival is one of the programs. We also have a journal called Scene, and it's a journal that explores film and visual culture by Black, Brown, and Indigenous folks. And so Coleman was on the cover. He was featured in Scene. I think it was our issue 6, I believe. And so yeah, so I think what I sent you was like our promo for that issue.
Right.
because Coleman went to Temple, so he has Philly roots as well. And yeah, we were excited to have. It was interesting though. I think some of our stockists were like, because we've been focusing on so many artists, and so they
Right.
weren't ready to have this. It's interesting to me because I see Coleman as like, because of the kind of actor he is, I see him as an artist. I don't see him as like Hollywood, but he
Right.
has gotten really famous, and so in their minds, I think some of these stockists were like, we don't want this anymore. But yeah, we were really happy that he said yes, and I think it was a really beautiful article.
You are doing a lot. You are writing, you are curating, you are styling, and you are directing. I saw some of your videos, which were pretty incredible.
Thank you.
One, of course, with the homie Indiari, which was great.
Yeah.
A song that I'd loved, but I'd never seen the video for.
Oh,
And I
yeah.
wouldn't know it. My sister directs it, and it was really good.
Thank you.
Um, the one that really stuck in my heart, though, was the video you directed by the son of the two um,
Oh,
people.
Mike and Debbie Africa.
Yes.
Hmm.
Woo! So beautiful.
Yeah. Fly
So beautiful.
Baby.
Could you tell us about that experience? Because I know I'm watching. I'm like, oh, imagine working on it. How
Yeah.
interesting or inspiring that.
Yeah. So Mike Africa Jr. Is also an MC and also someone who does a bunch of things. We're actually exactly the same age, so I'm like these like late 70s babies with a bunch of anxiety. But he was really interested. His parents were part of the Move Nine, and so he was actually born while his mother was incarcerated. And he spent all of his life working to free them and other political prisoners. And his parents both were sent home in, I want to say 20. I may get this wrong, but maybe I'll say 2018. I think they were both
It
came home
wasn't that
around that
long.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't that long ago. And so he approached me in 2020 wanting to do a music video for Mother's Day because his mother came home first.
Right.
And yeah, we ended up, raising a little bit of money and making this music video. And it came out and Mother's Day of I think of 2020. And yeah, it was a really, really beautiful experience. And that video I actually co-directed with my best friend Rashid Zakat. And yeah, it was a beautiful experience. And I don't know Mike Sr. and Debbie super well, but I see them often and their spirits are so light and beautiful. And they now are filmmakers. They have a film in this year's festival, which is just like I I love that because they've been hovering around Black Star because people keep making films about them. And it's just so wonderful to get to know them in this way and get to know Mike too.
For sure. For sure.
Yeah.
Now you mentioned your festival, and your
Hmm.
festival is coming up.
Yes, it is. It's a
Can
week
can you
away.
talk a little bit about it?
Yeah,
On
yeah.
that?
So, this is the 14th annual Black Star Film Festival that starts July 31st and it ends August 3rd. It takes place in Philadelphia. We have 92 films, and panel discussions and parties, and it's a really good time. The festival now takes place primarily in Center City, um, at the Kimmel Center and its environs, and the parties are in other neighborhoods, but most of the festival is in Center City. And yeah, I mean, it's become an international event, and we have our programmers live all over the world. The audiences come from all over the world. Um, I don't know what else to say, but I hope people join us.
Man,
We get, yeah, I mean, it's a really, I always say I don't know what it's like to go to the festival because I'm, running around all the time, but just from hearing from people and also, I do get glimpses. It's really beautiful. It's a beautiful space. I feel so much like I was raised on festivals. I think about the African Street Festival in Brooklyn. I think about National Black Arts Festival in Atlanta, Malcolm X Day in Atlanta. Even just something like Leimert Park on a Sunday in LA. Like there's so many of these cultural moments that shaped me, and Black Star is definitely because of that, right? Like wanting to have that space. And people for a long time have referred to the festival as a kind of family reunion. And it kind of is, it's like the filmmakers and the audiences have grown together to the point where you have someone like Mike and Debbie after coming to the festival making a film, right? And someone like, Sean's goddaughter, Sunny, was at the festival. She was in a music video of his that was in the festival. Then she had a film in the festival last year, right? Like as a 21-year-old. So there is this way where it is sort of family, but it also is a really rigorous festival. And so it's really hard. I don't choose the films anymore. I spend most of my time trying to raise money and keep it afloat. And when people don't get in, then it's not a family anymore.
Yeah, it's gonna be
That
hurtful.
part is really hard.
Right.
Yeah.
Folks' feelings get hurt. But I mean, yes, it is what it is. But see, with you passing on and empowering people with responsibility, that's the purpose of culture. It's not to something for us to have and just to, covet and hold on to without passing it on and encouraging. And people who you expose culture um, to can't help but be influenced and naturally follow suit. When we were growing up, we couldn't really see it because we're growing up being exposed, but then wouldn't you know it, we, in certain respects, took the reins. So why wouldn't we expect younger people to be influenced and follow suit? It's really interesting, but it's natural. It's organic. Culture is to be shared for everybody. So it's really awesome that you're doing it. Um, is there anything else that you have coming up that you'd like to share with anyone listening or watching?
Mm, we'll have another issue of Scene, which is the film journal coming out in October. And then after that, in November, we do our annual gala. And then in the next year, we sort of start our calendar all over and we have a seminar that we do every March, which people should check out. It's called the William and Louise Greaves Filmmaker Seminar. We do
Mhm.
that at Stanford in California. And then we'll have another issue of Scene in May, festival submissions open next year. And it feels crazy to be talking about things already in next year, but it's happening. I'm co-curating an exhibition at the Barnes Foundation, which is really, really exciting. I don't think I can announce the artist yet, but just I hope folks are interested. If you saw Terrence's show, it will be another moving image show at the Barnes. So I'm really excited about that. That opens in April.
Awesome.
Yeah.
See, uh, film as a visual art is so important, just like static paintings and images. The thing that I love about film is that film always provides a cultural snapshot. And when we as a community in a diaspora transcend through time, there should always be an archive of cultural snapshots. I've often been in certain ciphers and, just lived in certain eras and said, man, I wish that someone was filming this and maybe I should have. But
Hmm.
I know that when it is filmed, and that's why I love the fact that you're curating and encouraging film and having festivals so that different people's films can be seen, because what you end up with is this myriad of archived cultural snapshots that are available for people to study, reflect upon, and to, as they uh, watch and get into them, are able to increase our subjective awareness, you know. So salute.
Thank you.
You're welcome, of course. And I want to thank you, Maori Carmel Holmes, for being such a wonderful friend, a true asset to the community in the cultural and spiritual sense of the word. I'm a believer that the word asset comes from the uh, Phoenician culture representing the goddess Aset, who
Hmm.
was the rememberer. She remembered Osar or Osiris. And
Hmm.
that's what you do as a curator. You connect
Hmm.
dots, which is something that we always encourage because as a community that has been, unfortunately, through colonization, miseducated and fractured, it is now our responsibility to connect the dots and remember what's been separated. And
Yeah.
you're doing an awesome job of it. And I love you.
Thank you. I love you too.
And thank you again for being a part of this. And I know there's so much that I wanted to ask you, but if if I start chiming in every time, we were going to digress, and we would never be able to have that wonderful overview of the journey, which is only a part one. So we're gonna revisit you and your work in the future. But I can't thank you enough for being a part of it and being a part of this series. You are an icon.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And thank you for having me on. I guess this is a regular program, so I'll say on this program. I'm really, yeah, it's really touched to get your message. And I really appreciate because you were so much a part of my um, growing, my growing up, my learning. Um, and yeah, it means a lot. So thank you.
Likewise, it was an adventure.
Yeah.
We'll talk more. But
Yeah.
safe travels, best of fortune with the festival. Please continue doing it, and we're gonna talk more. There's some
Okay.
things I feel like we could add to each other's endeavors.
Okay.
All right, and world,
All right.
thank you for being a part of We've Been Fresh from '79 live, and we will be seeing you again. Take care.
Thank you.